Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Welcome. Here we are, everybody. I am George Armistead, and I am here with Alvaro Jaramillo. This is the latest episode of Life List, a birding podcast. Alvaro, what is happening, man?
Hi, how you doing, George? Actually enjoying beautiful kind of sunny weather, here on the coast, which does happen at this time of year. This is when we get the start of the sun. The end of summer is cold and foggy. Now it's fall and it's sunny and warm. We have all the seasons turned around here on the coast. And, yeah. But so it's nice. Although I think the rest of the state's having a big heat wave that's unbearable. But here at least it's bearable.
Nice. Well, that is good. Yeah, you do live in a little. You guys are in a weird little microclimate situation there around the Bay Area. It is. It's warm here. It's in the low mid 90s. In fact, there's several schools that are closing early today due to heat. Which is not something that ever happened when I was a kid. It's like, man, we had snow days here and there, but heat days, that wasn't a thing back, when I was in school.
Well, the kids are weak now, not like the fortitude of the older generations. Obviously, we're weaker than the generation previous to us, and
it's just the way it works.
It's
just the way it works.
They melt.
Yeah, back. That we walked uphill to school both ways, back when we were. Right. Yeah, that's the way it worked.
The bones were stronger back in the old days and
tougher. We were tougher.
Yeah. A little shorter, stockier people who could handle more things.
Yeah.
Now,
a little squatter. Yeah. More rotund. Yeah.
It's just these,
yeah,
whiny people. No, I'm just joking.
More feeble with every generation.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's, America. Making America feeble again. It's funny though, that whole thing, it's every generation's exactly the same, like they always complain about the younger generation being whatever, just not up to par. I mean,
it is a constant.
50s, it was like,
these kids today, this generation, I know. And they're always like, it's just time is what changes, it's not people don't really change that much, but
no, actually, they actually have gotten taller and healthier over the years, but there you go. I think it's crazy though. I mean, you've got these, so that my weather, guru, the guy I follow, Daniel Swain, he published, along with other collaborators in this sort of multifaceted thing, some news that sort of went worldwide, which was that California should be prepared for a mega flood. I don't know if you saw that in the last couple of weeks.
I did see that, yes.
And it seems crazy. And they even talk about how crazy it is to be talking about a mega flood during a multi-year drought. But he was sort of saying this is what's happening, is that we're going from situations where storms will become more powerful and droughts will become more unbearable and heat will become, greater, and we're going to have cold areas and cold snaps that will be record breaking. So it's sort of everything is not only the mean is moving, but that divergence from the mean.
The extremes are getting more extreme.
Yeah. And you read the stuff that he puts out and the fact that some of these mega floods have happened in the past. And you're like, oh my God, all you need is essentially just, a full January, let's say, of the high elevated kind of stream of rainfall that we get from off and on. If it all happens in one situation, 1 year, and it's supposed to be, usually this will likely be in an El Nino year, then you could get all of Sacramento underwater. Like much of the Central Valley turning into an inland lake, a sea. And you're thinking, this is insane. But you read it and you're like, actually, this has happened in the past. It's not that insane. So to have somebody warn us to do something about it, or in terms of like prepare, like buy a boat, inflatable dinghy or something. I don't know how you prepare, but
Yeah.
it's definitely better to have it as a potential, in the next 30, 40 years, rather than just not have it be there at all. Kind of like
Yeah.
we're preparing for earthquakes all the time, right? It's sort of, but I thought it was interesting, weather, climate.
Yeah.
Birders like weather and climate. Sometimes now it's getting so crazy,
How his forecast of this mega flood? I saw sort of the headlines in the notes. I didn't get a chance to read the whole treatise that he made on this, but did he give any kind of timeline? Are we talking like sometime in the next couple decades, or are we talking like sooner than that, or
Yeah, I think they're talking about the probability of it happening in the next 20 years or something is moderately reasonable enough to be thinking about it, or something like that. It's so it was, but they modeled using current weather info, and they actually modeled their predictions using sort of a modeled scenario of the world in a different context. In the future, they did a whole bunch of different kind of predictions, and it all comes out like it's actually a viable possibility.
Wow,
the fact that in the 1800s it actually did happen. So it's like, okay,
that would alter everything out there. It would change everything. Yeah,
it would. We're right now worried about the Salton Sea going dry and the Great Salt Lake and all these situations. But, what if we had 1 or 2 years when it just totally reverses to way too much water, like what's happening now, like with the Mississippi, as the Mississippi is like flowing heavy right now, right? It's crazy, and some of these floods out in Pakistan, I guess.
I was going to say, right? Pakistan right now is crazy, like 33 million people displaced or something. I mean, it's unthinkable.
Yeah. And, from a birder perspective, you do wonder, like, obviously we're worried about the people right now, but all that water does something, right? Like, I mean, some of these water bodies are going to be full for years, or areas are going to be moister than they have been for years. It must actually create an entirely shift in certain birds' populations and distribution. And I wonder if eBird will be able to spot that or find it, if there's enough birders.
I mean, I feel like every day in social media, you're seeing, imagery of lakes in the southwestern U.S. that are, they're like, this is what they looked like in 1975, and this is what they looked like in 2005. And, it's pretty dramatic how much water has been lost. As you say, a couple big floods could change that pretty dramatically. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. So what have you been up to? What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I actually have not been birding that much lately, but I did manage to get out this morning and do a nice little traipse around one of my patches near the house here. And it's almost September here, and birds, they are moving. And smattering of warblers, chestnut-sided warblers, and magnolias, and red-eyed vireos are really starting to build up in numbers. And I'm always like looking at them, hoping for a black whiskered or yellow green or something. That would be like epic bird of all time to find around here. So I have that in mind. But one of the nice birds,
vireo, I get them in the yard.
You've had them in the yard? Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. Yeah, actually, I think I need it as an ABA bird. I've seen plenty of them in, Central America, but
I've only seen yellow-green vireo in my yard in the ABA.
It's a good way to do it, Al, if you can manage it.
It's a weird situation.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that was, again, kind of unthinkable in the mid-Atlantic up until the last few years. And now Cape May, they've had a couple, and they've had at least one on the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and I think Massachusetts might have a couple. So it's one of these things that they're just slipping through the cracks, and there's so many red-eyed vireos, and it'd be real easy to just not see a red-eyed vireo real well. Just trying to pick one of those out would take, not only some work, but an incredible amount of luck. But of course, as we've discussed before, if you're not in the game and looking, then you can't win the game. So, so I'm trying to win the game. But,
one good win eventually is the Marsh Harrier game, because there was a Western Marsh Harrier scene in Maine, and obviously great excitement and the whole thing, big rarity, sort of first confirmed one in the U.S., but there's been something like 5 or 6 records in the Caribbean. So it makes you think, so those probably also went through the U.S. and nobody saw them.
Yeah. Well, and there's even been reports in the U.S. There was one in Virginia at Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge. I want to say I don't remember, it was late 80s or early 90s, but it was seen by, I think, over 2 days, maybe, by a number of people that were pretty good birders, that like knew what they were looking at. And everybody said it was a Western Marsh Harrier at the time. And so, this thing's, I don't know when the last time it's been seen up there in Maine. But I was thinking like it'd be so awesome if this bird didn't really hang around one spot, but just sort of like, popped up at different places, as it gets colder here. Maybe he'll head south, and maybe he'll turn up at Chincoteague. And how cool would that be,
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I think is going to happen. That bird's migrating right now, and it's, it could even show up like at Cape May and the Hawk Watch.
Yep.
It's like
that's
oh my god,
I was talking about that very thing with Tom and Doug the other day, and I'll be down there both in September and October. So, that'd be a fun thing to dream about, is having that cruise by. Yeah.
Huh.
Another nice bird I had today was the olive-sided flycatcher, which is a scarce migrant around here. Looking at them, they kind of hug, the fall line, the geological fall line here. There's a number of things that don't, they kind of stick to the edge of the Appalachian foothills and don't get down as much along the coastal plain. So someplace like Cape May, where they get a lot of migrants funnel in, they'll get a good number there. But right here, we're right on the edge of the fall line, and it's a pretty decent place to find these olive-sideds. But still, always a treat to see them. It's really kind of a scarce, rare migrant around here. It's a bird we always get excited about. And this thing was going after an eastern wood pewee. And like I heard an audible smack as it like went after this eastern wood pewee. They were hunting out of the same big tall oak, had a big, olive-sided flycatchers love snags, right? They love to perch on exposed snags, even more so than pewees do.
Was it a Will Smith size smack that you heard?
It was even
Rock.
more audible than that. Even more audible. Yeah. No, it was. It was like, I was like, man, that sounded like it hurt, And then there was a robin that took the bold step of perching in one of those snags near this olive-sided, and eventually he didn't really mess with it. The olive-sided didn't really mess with it until it took off and started flying away, and then it just, like an eastern kingbird, it went after it, just like right on its back, So that was really nice to see. That's always a treat to see olive-sided flycatcher. Nice bird today.
Yeah, they breed here, but I hardly ever see them as migrants. Like they just sort of appear and then they disappear. But the other day I was walking the dog and an olive-sided flycatcher in the middle of the day just flew over, heading into over grassland. And I was like, I've never actually seen that around here. Just
wow.
Olive-sided flycatcher flying, and their shape looks more like a waxwing, like they're so
Yes.
weirdly proportioned. They don't look like a flycatcher almost when they're flying.
That's the big danger around here is juvenile waxwings will perch up on little snags in the distance, and people will think they have an olive-sided, and sometimes they end up being these juvie waxwings.
Yeah, they're a neat bird. You've probably seen them in the wintering areas where they do exactly the same behaviors in the summering areas. They're right on a snag, tippy top, but yet they're above the canopy of a tropical lowland forest instead of like, the woods near, Canadian woods or something.
Yeah, if you're used to looking for them like, in the, spruce forests of, the north, and all of a sudden you see them down there, it's like, wow, they're doing the same thing, but just completely different, habitat. But that's one of my favorite games on Alaska tours is to spot the olive-sided flycatcher. You can often hear them giving that quick 3 beers song, and then trying to spot them because you can hear them from a long way off. That song really carries, especially in that landscape, and spotting it atop the spruce is always a fun game, especially if you succeed in spotting them.
Yeah. Yeah. What other, let's see, rarities? There's been some pelagic rarities out your way too, right? Like a lot of pelagic goings on.
Yeah. I am really excited. We've got a Hillstar Nature pelagic coming up on the 10th of September. There's just a couple spots left. I think it'll probably sell out in the next day or two if it hasn't actually already today. We'll see. And yeah, this is good news because, man, there have been some epic pelagics the last few days. Pelagic out of Cape May, New Jersey, this past weekend had 2 white-faced storm petrels, which is kind of the big bird everyone's going for around here this time of year. And I have people contacting me sometimes say, hey, I'd really love to go on a pelagic, but I don't want to go, on like a full day. Could we do like a 5-hour, trip? And I want to be like, yeah, we could, but our chances of finding anything of note are really slim. Usually you got to get out in the deep. Now, white-faced storm petrel is one. Occasionally you can get super, super lucky, like they just did off Rhode Island, I think it was. They had one, not far from shore. Every now and then they're just a couple miles offshore. So that can happen. But, man, it's not something you can count on. But they had 2 on this Jersey trip. Plus they had New Jersey's first Bermuda petrel, the Cahao, right? One of the rarest seabirds in the world. Yeah, the Cahao. Such a great name. I think they should change the name from Bermuda petrel just to Cahao. I think that's such a cooler name. And it's a great story as well. The comeback of the Cahao, is down to just a couple dozen birds at one point, and their numbers have climbed and climbed due to the conservation efforts in Bermuda where they nest. And it's sort of like a black-cap petrel, but smaller and more compact and darker overall. And so that was pretty epic. And then this weekend, Brookline Bird Club trip out of Massachusetts went out, and they got to where they needed to find the white-faced storm petrels. And that's the best area, really, in North America that people go to with any regularity for white-faced storm petrel. And they had 589, which I think like the previous record, on any North American trip is maybe in the 20s or 30s or something. There might be some fishing boat that had 40 or 50. And it's a matter of getting out to where they are to really rack up the numbers. And man, I think these guys, the Brookline Bird Club trip, I think they not only got out to where they are, it happened to be a very good year as well. And maybe these things are a little, Brian Pattison was saying he thinks you get out there far enough, they're out there, and often even a little further north, but maybe they're a little bit further south this year. And that's part of what's going on. But, what a charismatic little seabird, white-faced storm petrel. People don't know it. I mean, it's a dapper little seabird, little storm petrel. They say it's like a little kangaroo, working along the surface of the water. They can't go very fast, but, man, they can go a long way with that little kangaroo flight of theirs.
Yeah, they hop. And a lot of these the southern storm petrels have these funny hopping or odd skipping, oddball things like the black bellied. I don't know if you've ever seen them in the south when a big wave comes through. They will they will go along that wave and not trail the leg into the wave.
Yeah, they kind of skip along it.
Yeah, almost like they're using the wave to push them off,
Yeah, to find the lift. Yeah, you see them kind of skitter along. They do that skittering.
And Wilson's, the Wilson's group does this kind of thing too. They will like, just hold their wings open and then paddle. But also sometimes they do it with closed wings and they're just walking on the water.
Like using the surface tension. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly what they're doing, I'm not sure if they're moving they're just using that to keep their body steady so they can see and feed, right? Like, so they're not moving too quickly, or if they're actually doing something with the feet to create food, disturb food or something. My guess is that they're trying to stay sort of steady and in position to eat is what they might be doing. But it's only the southern group. The northern storm petrels don't do anything quite like that. The hydrobatids now, hydrobatidae. But yeah.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. We had a pelagic, a couple of pelagics over the last week and a half or so. And we saw 3 Laysan albatrosses on this Sunday off of Half Moon Bay, which was cool.
Oh, man.
Multiple species of storm petrels, ashy black, Wilson's, lots of buller shearwaters this year. About a week and a half ago, week and a half ago now, out of Monterey, we found a Hawaiian petrel, which was a big one.
And, I need that bird. Bird.
Yeah. And a Nazca booby, which is becoming a regular in California, but not so much this far north. So for us, it's still a major one. And, the beaked whales, Baird's beaked whales. I don't know if...
How often do you see those? I saw that you had those, and I was like, man, that's an animal I'd really love to see. The Berardius.
I think it's the 3rd time we've ever seen him. And always It's been Monterey. We actually have never seen him off of Half Moon Bay, which may just be the situation. I don't know. It may be that there's more of them down there if they're around, but it's just kind of an exciting time to do pelagics. And we've gotten this, all of our pelagics are in marine sanctuaries. And it means that we cannot do certain things that you can openly do elsewhere, like chum. But we've just been granted a research permit that allows us, in the course of research on storm petrels locally, for us to do some limited amount of chumming. So that's been happening the last couple of weeks. And, and I'm really thankful to the marine sanctuaries that they want to get this data. And also, they know that there's a benefit to the birders, that, they can see albatrosses up close and so forth. And that connection to the birds is something that helps the sanctuary. We've started. So, that meant that we've been seeing some things a little closer and better than we have the last few years. So that's been cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hawaiian petrel, Laysan albatross, I remember, was my 500th bird for North America, for ABA area.
Wow.
On a Washington State pelagic out of Westport, notoriously blustery inlet, Westport.
Yeah.
But man, see some good stuff up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Westport. I didn't ever do a Westport pelagic, but I did the Oregon pelagics. We did a few of those, me and you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tours. And I think that was always considered a little calmer.
Yes. Yeah. I think it could only be. It's like Westport and like Cape Town. Those are like the ports I think of where you're going to get, the inlet, especially at Westport. Now, once you get up further, I don't remember it being quite so bad, but those are, you can get tossed around a little bit out there.
Yeah. So, George, and
yes, sir.
Recently, the AOS, the former AOU, published their supplement to the checklist of North American birds, which,
yes,
as you know, people wait for this with bated
breath. It's a big deal, man. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And the reason it's a big deal, right, is because people want to see if anything was split, right? They want their armchair ticks, you know.
And they don't want to lose anything, right? So lumps are usually not as popular. Splits, usually people are pretty happy about that.
People usually, they don't argue over the splits. I actually had a friend in Argentina just talk about, in Spanish, she called it lifer de escritorio, which means like, lifer while I'm at my desk. So there's even like, it's translated onto multiple language, the armchair tick. Like you're just sitting around in your armchair.
Escrow ticks.
Escrow ticks.
Yeah.
And then you can get a new one because you've seen the two elements of a split, such as happened this year with the Meadowlark, right? Which
yes, that was the big kind of the headliner. Yeah.
The headliner. Yeah. I like to say they, instead of Lillian's Meadowlark, they called it the Chihuahuan Meadowlark. Is that how you pronounce it?
Wow.
Chihuahuan. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. That's
I'm just so
you're gonna have to work on your Spanish there, Alvaro. Work on your Espanol.
I'm just trying to make fun of the fact that I'm sure that, even though this process of getting this English name that wasn't named for a person and there was public input and so forth, I'm sure that there's still going to be all sorts of complaints about the name.
And I'm sure.
Even though one of the concepts that's difficult in this one is that we know sort of the Lillian's Chihuahuan thing in the US from watching them. Most people see them in Arizona. Maybe some people see them in West Texas, New Mexico, but they're a desert bird, right? So, the desert grassland. So there were these ideas of the desert grassland meadowlark, the desert meadowlark. Yet there's an entirely different population of Chihuahuan meadowlark further south in Mexico in the mountains that's in moist areas. But it's a mountain, it's almost like the mountain plateau meadowlark. And it is darker in plumage. It's, I think it's Areopectoralis. And it looks nothing like Lilianae, the actual true sort of Lillian's portion of this meadowlark. So I wonder if in the end we're going to look at this name and think, oh, maybe we could have named it something more, Mexican or plateau meadowlark or some, I don't know.
I stand by high desert meadowlark.
High desert.
I still think that was colorful name.
But again, if you go further south, it's not a desert meadowlark.
But I guess if they split that one out, then the rest of it would be, right?
But they wouldn't split it out because it's in the same.
Oh, they're not going to. I thought that's where you're getting at.
No. Okay. I'm getting at the fact that it is one thing, and it's actually clearly one thing. Yet the northern element is Lillian's, which is this deserty pale thing. The southern part of the species of Chihuahua, it's actually darker, more, brighter colored, and not in true desert grasslands.
Right.
So, we've once again ignored this whole situation going on in south of the border.
Yeah. I generally didn't favor the names for coloration, but pallid meadowlark was one that, was floated, but then that one wouldn't work for the Auropectoralis.
Yeah. How about just new meadowlark?
Novel meadowlark. Yeah.
And we are so centered on, the US, Canada, ABA that, I saw somebody saying, now we have 3 meadowlarks. 3 meadowlarks? How about long-tailed meadowlark and, all these South American meadowlarks? There's more than 3 meadowlarks. We have 3 yellow ones, but
the other ones, there's all the loicas and the red-breasted blackbird. What used to be red-breasted blackbird, right? That's meadowlark too.
Yeah. I think if a new split happens with the yellow-breasted meadowlarks, it'll be Cuban meadowlark. That's my prediction. And I have a certain amount of invested time into that one.
So let me ask you, Al, of the updates you saw here to the checklist, and you can feel free to tell me if you hate this question, but do you have one you really like that, aside from the meadowlark? Let's, turn the page on the meadowlark. And do you have a decision here that really gets your goat, as they say?
Oh boy. So I gotta tell you that I am personally invested in some of these things because I had something to do with them. Like I actually wrote or was partaking in a proposal or that kind of thing, you know? So uh it's not an objective viewpoint I have. Very
All right,
subjective.
give us your
Somewhat
full
angry.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want angry Al. We want your fully subjective take here.
Okay, so let me start with a positive, right?
Okay.
There are some
Go high before you go low. I like it.
Yeah. There's some birds that are just added in because eventually the ABA, the ID people, there's all the publications happen, and we go, aha, these things have actually occurred in the AOU area, so we accept them as sort of vagrants. And I was super happy to see sort of the small-billed Elenia get added on now with multiple records. But the original one, you remember that, right?
I remember it well. Yeah.
With Greg out there putting it all in that, he had that Illinois forum.
Illinois Birders Network. Yeah. Illinois Birding Forum. Yeah.
Yeah. That was sort of a kind of cool thing. And so this bird shows up and, near Chicago, and people are going into this forum and giving their ideas of what it is. And, this is years ago. Nobody, it was like, well, that's no impediment. That's an Elenia.
2012, I think it was.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there were arguments back and forth. And I remember kind of getting into the wing formula and different aspects of what's going on. And I thought at that point, it didn't make sense to me. I thought, but because Chilean white-crested Elenia is much more likely,
right.
And in that mindset that I had, because I thought of it as more migratory, but I said, I think this is a small-billed Elenia, and I got pushbacks from some pretty major figures in the flycatcher world.
Yes.
Others who are more like okay with it, others who are, let's see how this plays out. But nothing played out because it kind of was a standstill. We didn't know what was going on. Then new records happened more recently in the last few years, and then we could figure, better photographs exist, little analysis of this and that, and boom, we figure out there's been now more small-billed Elenias, and they're taken over as almost the more likely Elenia to show up here as opposed to the Chilean. So that whole process that I was kind of little part of in the past, and I did a little how to ID them just recently, like a little video.
Yeah, that was a great video you did. Yeah.
So cool. Thanks. It felt like cool. Like it wasn't all a waste of my time where I could have been doing something else more productive. Like it actually shifted something. And obviously somebody else might have done the same thing and figured out the same thing over time. But there was a certain joy of seeing small-billed Elenia, added
on that list. Yeah. And, I still remember that. I remember that one well, that first one as well. And you and I talked about it. I remember we talked about it with, a bunch of our friends at the time. But I think I was in a restaurant with Greg Neese, Nate Swick, and one or two others from the ABA. And I remember
you're just
Greg
name dropping now. You're just name dropping.
Yeah, well, we were all working together, but and he Greg, with no context, just showed me the phone. He was like, "What do you think that is?" And I was like, "Well, it's an Elenian," and I was like, "It's it's either a white crested or a small billed." And I was like, "If I had to guess, I guess it's a small billed." And I was like, "Where is that?" And he was like, "It's in Chicago." And I was like, "Oh man." I assumed he was, somebody was down in Buenos Aires or something, and sent him these photos. And then I remember, you felt it was small billed after like looking at it like critically, and some others did as well. But then like a lot of folks kind of went white crested, and eventually it just wasn't resolved, right? Like people just decided it wasn't resolvable, and I still think that was the wrong decision. But yeah, it is. It's nice to see that one on the board finally. And Illinois has gotten another one since then. So that probably helps remove the bad taste from that first one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and definitely cool thing. And there's been other uh, vagrants that were added to the checklist. I think there's hooded crane, northern giant petrel, blue and white swallow, Inca tern, all cool things. I did, though, want to say to you that way back in those days, we used to talk about writing an article on wrong way vagrants from the
Yes.
austral migratory sphere. And
Yeah.
it's been many years and we haven't done it. I wonder if we should one day just do a podcast on that and just get
Yeah.
it out there
I like
in
that.
this format, which is easier
Yeah.
than writing things down on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can say anything here, it's like writing.
Yeah.
You got to actually be careful,
Yeah. You have to cite sources. We don't have to cite anything here. We just talk and people think we're telling the truth. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that. We should definitely, well, let's do that. Let's run with that. It's a point.
Well,
Austral
note
vagrants.
to self. Yeah.
Yeah.
Austral vagrants. Okay, so the one that there are things that I find moderately annoying. The Wimbrels weren't separated into two. Barn owls weren't separated.
Right. These seem like splits that should happen. Right.
Yeah.
Like the Wimbrel and the barn owl. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was involved in one of these proposals to separate the Lesser Antillean house wrens into multiple species, along with Brian Sullivan, Van Remsen, other people. And in that case, they did not accept it, but it was not due to the fact that they didn't agree. They just sort of thought, you've just put together this proposal and maybe you should publish this so it's on paper somewhere and then it can be assessed. Because just kind of going back here, the AOS is really process-based and very by-the-book type, the North American Committee. So they want to deal with published information rather than what they would say is just sort of, hearsay. Of course, the world has changed. Right now, you can look at multiple hundreds of photographs of birds on eBird or listen to things on Xenocanto or eBird and put together something like a proposal that you could convince the average human being that, yes, you're right, these are two species. But to them, there's like, okay, that's great, but publish it. And then we can look at it, right?
Seems a little antiquated. I mean, and maybe it's a case-by-case thing. Maybe there's some stuff you really would want to see published someplace and other things you could just kind of make a judgment call about, no?
Yeah. And I think this is an argument that's actually a really valid one as to these committees, and I'm part of the South American version of this committee. The relevance that these committees have and the authority they have is garnered to you now in today's world by the users, right? In the old school ways, it was just because the AOS, the AOU at the time said, well, this is our official committee. And other people would say, well, we're going to listen to the official word. Whatever the committees do, that's the official word. Today, we have, eBird, and sometimes eBird, Cornell has not agreed with the AOS committees and sort of done their own thing. And I think it should be a wake-up call to the committees to sort of say, okay, do we continue on this very, very conservative approach to making changes that are backed up by 120% evidence? Or do we start moving more quickly and not worry too much about the fact that we might make a wrong call every so often? Because we can always reverse them, right?
Yeah. And even with 100%, even with 120% of the evidence, you can still make a mistake. So,
Yeah. And I think this gets to the thrust of where birders get upset at the committee, at the AOS committees, is that they don't seem to move fast enough because they're being so conservative. And in fact, the culture of the committees becomes so seemingly not wanting to make changes unless, it's overwhelming, that people I think there's a lot of people just aren't listening anymore. They're like,
right.
Okay, I'm just going to use another checklist from, the IOC or maybe eBird. I'll just start putting them down as subspecies within my eBird account. You know what I mean? So
No, I think they
And
become a little less relevant as time goes on. If, like anything else, like the definition of a fossil, right, is something that stays the same as everything else changes around it. So,
yeah,
like, if you don't evolve to your surroundings, then you definitely risk becoming a fossil. And I'm not suggesting that that's the case with NAC, because there's a lot of thinking. All the people there are thinking people.
yeah, really good
They're
people on the committees
yeah,
is, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
and it is a thankless job too. Like, I like to point out that, if there's people like us and others say they're not moving fast enough. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. Like there's an obvious change. Do this, do that. And then you got other people being like, you know, like, split Wimbrel. What are you talking about? I like Wimbrel
yeah,
just the way it is. And
yeah,
then they get
yeah,
mad at, like, having to learn new stuff, basically. So, no matter
yeah.
what they do, they're going to face criticism, and I'm sure they're keenly aware of that. But yeah, it seems like it is an antiquated approach to always require everything be published. Like, you could make faster decisions that are important too and affect conservation, especially these house wrens in the Lesser Antilles, right? Some of these things you're talking about have really small populations.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like there's some
At
decisions
least
that could be made regarding their taxonomy that could have impacts that are even greater than just listing.
I want to say two of them are extinct, actually.
Yeah.
Martinique and Guadeloupe. Yeah, they're gone. And one of them was still there in the 80s. So, it's yeah. But, when you think about process and antiquated, maybe a lot of birders haven't thought about this, but it's the checklist supplement, right? And you're like, okay, checklist supplement to what? Like, what are they supplementing? And it's actually, this one is called the 63rd supplement to the American Ornithological Society's checklist of North American birds. Then you start looking at it and it says, this is actually the 22nd supplement since the publication of the 7th edition of the checklist. So we're talking about, there is actually a book that is the checklist of birds of North America that was published like in the 90s. That was the 7th edition. And each one of these things supplements, it changes stuff in the book. But they haven't published a new book. And to me, it's like, shouldn't this just be kind of this online living document rather
Right.
than
At this point. Yeah.
at this point, like,
Yeah.
it's sort of, it's such an old way to do it. And I mean, probably nobody's really thought about it because it's just the way it always has been.
Right.
And it does make for a nice annual supplement to come out, and we can all, like, summer when there's less birds and you're overheating in Philly and disgusted at the fact that, you have to keep you can't go out birding comfortably. You can at least, shake your fist at the supplement. But
yes. Yeah.
shaking my fist, here's the one that gets me.
Oh, wow. So we're not even to the one that really gets you.
No, I'm just building up my anger.
Oh my gosh. I'm scared. I'm like quaking
I know.
over here.
So I wrote this proposal because last year they separated, well, I thought great thing, the mew gull into into two species.
Yes.
Two species.
Oh, I'm with you on this. I am with
mew
you.
gull
Yes.
and common gull, right? And they said, well, we're splitting this thing. It's going to be super confusing if we keep mew gull, because we won't know what we were ever talking about if we were talking about the one in North America or the one in Europe, Asia. So we're going to give it a new name that's in fact a really old name. So in fact, they're reverting to a name that, the average person alive had never seen, used in public,
Right.
Short-billed gull. And you can argue, well, they really are short-billed, but so is Bonaparte's gull, right?
Right.
It's
not a great name.
It's not a great name. Mew gull, with all of its inaccuracies or various things or whatever you might want to go and find, is just a cool name.
And distinctive.
And it implies something cute to me. It's like a cute sounding name for a cute looking bird. There's this thing. I wrote up this proposal saying that, in fact, if we kept mew gull, we would minimize confusion.
Yeah.
Because unlike most birds, we actually had a English name that we used almost strictly for the North American one, Mughal. The other ones, we called them common gull or Kamchatka gull. We were using English names already to, in fact, talk about 3 species. Okay, it only was split into 2, but we already had these names. And a couple of years ago, the scoters were split, right? So white-winged scoter, we didn't have to change white-winged scoter. We kept it. And then velvet scoter in Europe, and then Steniger scoter in Asia. Black scoter stays black scoter,
Yeah.
right? Common scoter in the UK. Those names are always used, and it hasn't caused any confusion. Mughal was exactly the same, right? So my proposal was like, here's a bunch of reasons why this doesn't make sense. And if you look, it makes sense to keep Mughal. And it's only been a year since you changed this name, so it's the time to sort of fix it. Apparently, unanimously voted down.
Gosh.
Like, it wasn't even like, and so I am angry.
Yeah,
at the fact,
as well you should be, my friend.
Yeah.
As well you should be.
And obviously, it's personal because I really like Mughal, the name. But I think what really happened, okay, and this is very critical. I think
you're getting into the nitty gritty here.
Yeah, is that they hadn't thought about that when they made the original name change. They hadn't thought about it, and they hadn't thought about consistency. And then they made a change that seemed logical at the time without anybody sort of raising their hand and saying, hey, why don't we treat it like the Scoter one? And when somebody pointed it out that they essentially maybe not made the right call, there was a human response, which everybody has, of like, kind of, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me I'm wrong. But I think they did do the wrong thing, obviously, because I wouldn't have written that proposal. So I'm totally not being objective at all here.
Well, but, you are and you are not, right? Like put it this way: before you wrote that proposal, I suspect that you are like I am now. Was when the split was announced, you thought, okay, good, that they're finally splitting those 2 things. And wait, what? What are they naming it? They're naming it short-billed gull? Like, it already has a name. It already has a name that everybody in North America uses. Like, they didn't take the path of least resistance. They were like, let's make this more confusing. Like that's the part that I can't get past. Is you had, as you say, it's a rare situation where you're splitting a bird and they already have 2 widely used common names. Like, the situation. It was a problem that, it was a solution that didn't need fixing, I guess. They took a situation where they were about to make it perfect, and then they made a bit of a mess.
In England, they called it common gull. They didn't use the name Mughal, so there was already a separation. There were little bits here and there where there was a little, but confusion. Maybe a new book that used it or some, but minor,
right?
Like. This is, I think, for the average birder who's not going to get a new field, new field guide's not going to come up with these names for years, probably. They're going to have, okay, what, Mughal, short-billed gull's not in the book? Why? What's going on? And I just thought, like, wow, what's interesting that given a second chance to sort of fix this,
right?
Nobody thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And
it's like, we messed it up the first time. Let's continue to mess it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably if any of them ever hear this, they're not going to change now. But
I know, exactly. And I mean, what we do here is kind of, that's the whole point. We have fun and we have opinions, right? And some of them are funny and whatever, and some of them are actually funny yet serious, right? And I do think we are folks who actually really value the work of the committee.
Yes.
And by caring for the committee and the work that committees like this do, or records committees or eBird reviewers, all these people that help us kind of have the foundation of our birding kind of culture, we also get angry when we feel like the committees are not, or the work that's being done perhaps isn't matching expectations of what's out there, right? And
Yeah, it seems like the parsimony that's used by the committee is not in line with what the parsimonious approach that many birders might use. And it really is like scientists don't use the common names really. For the most part, a
no,
lot of them
right.
they mostly don't. So the common names are for the layperson. In which case, it's sort of like you might as well kind of cater to that audience. It would seem to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason I think you care about something, the old proverb, right, is that knowledge begins with putting a name to something. If you want these names, you get attached to some of them, but what you want is ease of communication about these things, and anything that complicates communication, especially if you're steeped in the subject matter the way so many of us are with birds, is that it becomes frustrating. And so I think that's where we are with this one. But sort of to your point, Albro, about some of these things, if they seem antiquated or poorly done or poorly thought out, people basically just ignore them. I'd be curious, and when it comes to mew gull, short-billed gull, do you find that people in California have rapidly adopted short-billed gull, and are you hearing that term used a lot? I just did a tour to Alaska this summer, and I remember 3 or 4 days into the trip, we're seeing mew gulls. I still call them mew gulls, and everybody else was calling them mew gulls as well. Like nobody was calling them short-billed gulls.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe that's because the change hasn't really taken a hold, or maybe because people don't like it. I don't know which.
Right. I think it's a bit of both. And I realize that, let's say if we had a split of the Whimbrel, Whimbrel, one word name, is fantastic. I would have loved one of them to just stay Whimbrel, maybe the Eurasian Whimbrel. It just could have been the Whimbrel, and we could have changed ours to, something else. Obviously, Hudsonian Whimbrel is what pops in, because that's, sort of the scientific name and one of the English names that's been used for it. But then there's a logic that we instill on English names that comes from the scientific naming of things, as if like, okay, so if you have Whimbrel, you can't just have Whimbrel. You got to have Eurasian Whimbrel versus Hudsonian Whimbrel. Do we? Like, can we, or create a new, I'm just kind of going through this sort of like mindset of confusion arises. Yes. But do we give up on a really cool name and make it just one level more efficient? Right.
I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying that like there should be Whimbrel and then there should be Hudsonian Whimbrel? Because to me, that would be confusing. I would not favor that personally.
Yeah. Or you could be Whimbrel and something else.
Right. Like American another one word name that maybe is
right. Yeah.
Some other has some history.
We could find out what, people from certain part of,
eBird could take a poll like they did with this meadowlark and come up with a bunch of cool suggestions. That could be fun.
We've been thinking about names for, various aspects. And I realize in Spanish, at least not Spanish, Spain Spanish, but Latin American Spanish, a lot of the old names for common things like in Argentina, Chile, Uruguay are one word names. So they don't say something meadowlark and something. They don't have a first and last name like our English names do. It's just a name, kind of like cow. We don't say cow bovine or something, we have a sheep caprid and we have a goat caprid, we just say sheep and goat because they're really common things that people use all the time, or names that people use all the time. And I thought, where in our history did we move? I bet we all call these things, from the old English names, right? It was like the wren, swallow, Whimbrel. And we started moving into this more complicated naming system. And then you think, well, maybe we should move back to this more simple one-word names for certain birds that don't tell you what they're related to. They just tell you what it is. And you can use the scientific name. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm getting at. It's like, Let's
Yeah.
make our
Well,
names
I would
groovy
love.
again.
Yeah, hey, let's make birding groovy again. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I like. I'd love to see Olive Warbler changed to Acatero. Did I get that name right? Did I say that right? Yeah,
I
Acatero.
think so.
And or like Red Start changed to the Spanish name Condalita, American Red Start. Um, like to me that'd be a really. I just think it's a fun name. Now, I'm not going to sit here and advocate. I don't have a big stake in this, but I just think Condalita. I love the one word names as you're suggesting too. I think those are fun. There's not that many of them, and they're cool, and a lot of them tend to be kind of distinct.
Yeah.
So Ovenbird, is a great, there's,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I do like that concept.
Like Audubon's Myrtle Warbler, right? This isn't one word name, but we could call it Audubon's. Well, obviously, now with the names for a person thing, okay, but let's just have those names like as an example: Audubon's Yellow Rump and Myrtle Yellow Rump. Don't use warbler at all. And you're like, oh, that's crazy because they are warblers. In fact, they're not warblers at all. Like real warblers are elsewhere. We just use this name to sort of group these things. And then somebody's going to say, well, hold on a second, but all warblers, we have the name warblers to know what they are. Well, no, we don't. Water thrush. We have ovenbird.
But we have, I mean, the aforementioned olive warbler. The aforementioned olive warbler is one of my favorites, of course, because it is neither olive nor a warbler, as many people like to say.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and it's not a warbler twice removed, right? It's not a New World warbler. It's just not an Old World warbler. It's like, it's a completely different critter. It's like, so I wonder if we should expand our box of how we think about names. And just getting back to this Mughal, I think it was unnecessary and it was a cool name.
right.
Now we have a lamer name. We've lamed down a name. Short. I
agree. That's the way I felt about thick-billed longspur as well. For the record, I thought that was, didn't like that choice either. I thought it was it's like it has a slightly thick bill, but it doesn't look like a thick-billed lark. Like it's not it's not that dramatic. I'd much rather have a distinctive name like shortgrass longspur, or even use the genus name. Just the genus name. One word.
Right.
Rhynchophanes.
Right.
It's the only one.
Right.
Much more fun, much more colorful, much more distinctive, and it also helps people get how distinct these things are.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you on that one. And people, especially committee members will say, well, one thing we always get pushed back on is English names, and nobody's ever happy with any choice that's made. And I agree with that. Nobody's, but I think part of it has been that the choice for these names has been so regimented and structured almost in this real logical framework, rather than more of like, okay, let's loose here. Let's go a little crazy with it and see if we can come up with a truly memorable, fun name.
Distinctive name. Yeah. Like memorable, name. Fun, distinctive name. Yeah. I agree. So there's a bunch of other stuff here, Alan. We're coming up on the hour here. One thing I wanted to get your take on was the split of the Cuban kite from hook-billed kite, which I got to be honest, this is one I didn't actually realize it wasn't split. I thought it had been split.
Yeah, I know.
Years ago. I was like, oh, I've been thinking of it as Cuban kite. I don't know how long, as long as I can remember.
Decades old, right?
Yeah. But now this is one that a lot of people say. What did you think? I assume you are on board with the split, and it's one a lot of people say is, may no longer be around.
Right. Yeah. I've seen specimens of the Cuban kite, and it's most closely related to hook-billed kite, which does have a population actually in the Caribbean, but way, way south. Like we're talking Grenada. There's like a little population of actual hook-billed kites, but they're like proper hook-billed kites. then there's nothing till you get to this Cuban population. So they're really isolated. They're actually much closer to the population in Mexico, if you think about it distance-wise. But they eat these arboreal snails in Cuba, which has a real diversity of arboreal snails, and some of them are really big. So this thing has a huge bill. That's one of the things. It's different in plumage and huge bill. And yeah, some people think it's extinct, and there's even been sort of an idea that people have been looking for it for a while and they haven't seen it. But I don't think people have really been looking for it that as communicated. I mean, every time I've talked to Arturo Kirkconnell, for example, on the Cuban kite, he's like, it's a question of going and trying to look for it. But he hasn't communicated to me that there's been much work to actually look for it. And there is a photograph, and it was seen last, I want to say like in the 90s, maybe early 90s. So the idea that it's extinct, I'm not buying it. I would say that it's probably still around. And I do think it's a good split. Even though we don't have vocal data, we don't have various other bits of data, it's pretty distinctive and it's really isolated.
That one caught my eye because I just was surprised by it.
How about, what's your take on, did you see the Labrador duck? Did you look at that bit, which is extinct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't everybody kind of figure they were closely related to Steller's eider?
I don't think they did, because they had to move it they actually had to move it in the checklist order.
I guess that was another one I was surprised by, because, you look at it and, Steller's eider is not like the other eiders.
Right.
As a lot of folks know, but a lot of folks may not know. It is not like the other eiders. Like structurally, it's just a different beast. It's in a different genus. And I used to tell everybody that, it must surely be the Labrador duck's closest living relative. I don't know where I got that information from. But on our Alaska tours, I used to tell people that. So maybe
it just proves you're ahead of the game.
I must have heard it someplace or read it someplace, but at any rate, yeah, that one was not a surprise, but I thought it's cool. It's like just cool to think of. I think it's cool to think of how different Labrador duck is than anything else that exists right now, and also healthy for people to think about how Steller's eider is really a distinct duck. It's a different thing. And when you see that, if you're lucky enough to see one, take time to think about how this is as close as we're going to get, folks, unless they manage to clone some Labrador ducks sometime soon. So as close as we're going to get.
Yeah. And I mean, let's see, maybe the final thing I'll say that there was a proposal to lump the black oyster catcher with the blackish oyster catcher, which you can kind of get at why that was a thought. There's this black oyster catcher in northern hemisphere. There's this blackish oyster catcher in South America, and they look pretty similar. Structurally different, but they're all black and all that. But the idea was to lump them, and I thought, where'd this come from? It's sort of a weird. It was truly almost like they look alike, therefore we should stick them in the same species. They don't quite sound alike. They don't do a lot of other things alike, and I wrote a defense for keeping them separate to the committee, and then other people did as well. And it is interesting that some of these things come out of the blue, like you're like, why are we doing this? It's sort of like, and then you have the potential horror of, let's say people go along with it and they just suddenly lump these two things. They'd be like, oh no, like this makes no sense, but nobody nobody put in a word against this or, sort of data to support so there's all sorts of things that go on in these, this process, a lot of them that don't really come to light because they're just voted down behind the scenes or what have you, and they're thrown back to get more data on it. But I wish they would put out their opinions publicly as to what they were thinking, because the North American Committee does not. The South American Committee does. All the opinions are actually public. And that would be kind of useful, because then you at least get a sense for if somebody votes something down, why they voted it down, rather than it's like, the committee just didn't accept this. We have no idea why,
Yeah, it would be nice to know. I mean, there's some splits that were not adopted that I think we all wonder why.
Yeah.
So, it'd be interesting to hear more about the Wimbrel and the Sharpshinned hawks from across various parts of the New World. And, I've kind of been waiting for San Lucas robin in Baja California to get split from American robin. That's kind of one. I don't know anything about it, but I just think it would be cool if that thing was split and was endemic and was completely isolated, and we had to make pilgrimages to go see it. It'd be a great reason to go to that part of the world. So, not all of my reasons are scientific by any means, but, it would be interesting to hear the rationale on why they didn't do some of these things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's really completely like, okay, we have 3/4 of the puzzle here. And they basically throw it back to get the other quarter of the puzzle. Sometimes I feel like there's enough there to separate, something and just go with it. And there's a little uncertainty on it. And again, you have the ability to change back if you have to in the future. You know what I mean? Like, these are not static for the time being, but I think there's a real concern the committees have of like backtracking, which I don't know why. I change my mind all the time, and I think it's kind of a fun thing to do.
and not changing your mind sometimes because is being conservative on these committees can make you end up more incorrect than just being flexible, being a little more flexible. It seems like.
Yeah. But it's a thankless job, and
it is that for sure.
Nobody gets paid to be on these committees. Nobody,
and birders see around, and they probably start, giving you flack for your decisions. So,
and the professionals, I don't think they get any professional
accolades or anything.
Accolades or better job because they do it. In fact, you might argue the opposite. They're spending time on this stuff that's taking time away from their actual publications. So yeah, it's easy to be critical, obviously, but that's what we do here.
That's right. Yeah. We're committed. We're committed. We're interested. We're interested parties. Yeah. Well, good stuff. Alvaro, what else have you got going on coming up in the next couple of weeks here?
We have more pelagics coming up all the way into late October. So
high season for high pelagic season.
Yeah. So you can find all that at alvarosadventures.com, and there's like a boat trip pelagic section there. You can go down and pick a trip. Some of the ones coming up are selling out pretty quickly, but excited because there's some species we really sort of haven't seen yet. The season hasn't progressed through to the point of actually seeing flesh-footed shearwater coming in, or the numbers of skuas, and so the later arrivals, and that's always cool to look forward to. And right now, it just seems like there's a lot going on. There's like a lot of activity. Both you got it in the East Coast, and we got it on the West Coast. Just a great year for offshore birding.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm looking forward to our trip I mentioned coming up on the 10th of September as well. And I'm also looking forward to just being around for spring migration. I'll be between now and the time you and I get on that boat to go to Antarctica, I'm mostly going to be around here doing some regional trips, going down to Cape May a couple times, including for the festival there. I'll be leading some field trips. I hope folks will take a look at the Cape May New Jersey Audubon Festival that's coming up in October. That's going to be fun. I'll be spending some time down on the eastern shore of Virginia in the Cape Charles area, the tip of the Delmarva Peninsula there. It's another peninsula in the Mid-Atlantic that collects a lot of southbound birds. That should be a ton of fun. I'll be going there with some folks and friends from the Pennsylvania Society of Ornithology. So that'll be a good time. And Hillstar stuff, man, there's a lot going on. We're about to publish some more information about our Glacier to Grasslands tour guided by Josh Coville. And Molly and I still have a good amount of space left on our Columbia Life List event that's coming up in February. It's a great deal. Really encourage folks to take a look at it. We're working with the Colombian government, and we've managed to really keep costs down. I think this could be a really fun event, and Molly and I are both excited for it. So really encourage folks to take a look at that. But yeah, anything else for the good people, Al?
I am excited about vagrant season. We don't have a lot of true migration here in the West, but we get the vagrants coming in, a lot of eastern warblers, and it's already starting up pretty quick, early. I mean, we're not even in September, and there's red starts and water thrushes being seen and least flycatchers and all this. And I'm thinking, I think this is shaping up to be like a big vagrant year. It wasn't last year. So
maybe you're due.
Kind of, prairie warblers showing up and all sorts of stuff. So
nice.
I'm keen on getting out a few mornings and quickly checking some willow patches or just looking out the backyard and seeing if I can find something here.
Me too. Got 2 new yard birds the other night. I got my first common nighthawks going over, had 7 of them, and my first peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on the planet, cruising right over Roxborough, Philadelphia here. Pretty sweet.
Wow, yeah. Man, I get like 1 new one a year.
Yeah, well, you've been there a while.
Yeah.
Well, cool beans, man. Good chatting with you as always. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again soon. Cheers, Al.
Bye-bye. See you all.